Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today is Friday, November 25th, 2011. I'm speaking with Mrs. Prayerna Mohan Bali of Sunnyvale, California. But interview is being done in New York City. Mrs. Bali, where did you grow up? What's your native place?
Well, I mostly grew up in UP.
UP.
Since my father was a government servant,
Okay.
We traveled every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And last 6 years of my education was done in Kanpur.
Kanpur.
And I received a master's degree in botany.
Botany from
Yes.
Kanpur.
Kanpur.
Very well. And then before that, what did you do? Where were you born? Where was your hometown?
I was born in Srinagar, Kashmir.
Kashmir.
My mother's parents lived their whole life there.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother grew up there and she graduated from college there.
Mm-hmm.
And then my father was from Lalpur
Lalpur
in Pakistan, Punjab.
Yeah, okay.
And after the marriage, my mother would stay during the year in Lalpur, but
Okay.
summers she would come with children.
With your
With me, of course. I was, at the time of partition, I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And I had a sister who was
Okay.
1 year old.
Were you had any older brothers and sisters?
No, I'm the oldest.
So did they tell you about the house in Lalpur?
Actually, I remember the house very
Okay.
vividly.
Oh, okay.
And
How was it like?
It was not a very big house, but it was, the area was quiet, it was open, and, and
Was it a mud house or brick building?
It was mud house.
Okay.
But it was quite decent size.
1 floor, 2 floors?
Single floor, and
Okay.
My grandmother was there, my father's mother. My grandfather had passed away when my dad was only 2 years old.
Okay.
So he was the only child because
child.
his 2 sisters had passed away.
Oh.
And my grandmother owned 2 buffaloes.
Oh, okay.
And right next to the house there was an area where the buffaloes
Okay.
were. And then outside the house there was a street, and across from the street there was a big garden, huge big garden, which is enclosed by the walls.
Wall.
And
That belonged to your family?
That belonged to. And also my father had inherited land
Mm-hmm.
from his father.
Okay.
My grandfather was a headmaster
Okay.
in Lalpur High
Lalpur.
School.
What was his name?
His name was Devi Chandra Mohan.
Yeah. And what was your parents' name?
My father's name is Om Prakash Mohan,
Okay.
and he is 90 years old, and currently for last 25 years he's been living in Dehradun after retirement.
Oh, I see. And your mother?
My mother unfortunately passed away.
What's her name?
Her name was Shanta Mohan,
Shanta Mohan.
and she passed away in 2005.
Okay.
And
So-
she was the only woman graduate in her, school year,
Okay.
college year.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what happened to your house and the family in Lalpur?
Well, everything was gone at the time of partition. I remember a little bit, maybe it was around April or May when trouble started.
Any recall?
Next to,
what was the trouble like?
well, the only thing I remember,
Or did they tell you anything?
they told me that there were riots going on and houses were burned, and
Is the houses of Hindus or also Muslims?
I don't recall.
Okay. In Lalpur? Was
In
it?
Lalpur.
Okay.
And next to our house was my father's uncle's house.
Mhm.
And he was an engineer.
Mhm.
And he had a big brick 2-story house.
Mhm.
And at night, for some nights, everybody, all of us were gathered and up at the roof, and we had to duck down.
Mhm.
And the men in the house, like my father was in our house, and his uncle and his cousins, they would stand with hard hats and guns pointed down. And then, my father sent my mother and with my sister who was a baby and myself to Srinagar.
Okay.
So from Srinagar, I don't remember much of the, what was going on, except I do remember that my mother and myself and my sister and my mommy and her two children, who were about the same age as us, we were put on a plane because my uncle worked on the ground of our Indian Airlines.
Okay.
And we had nothing to bring. My mother brought a little attache of her jewelry.
Okay.
But when she was climbing up the plane, somebody took it from her.
Oh, from Lalpur itself?
No, from Srinagar.
Srinagar. They
Yes.
snatched it from Srinagar.
Yeah.
And where were you going?
We were going to Delhi.
Oh, from there. This is after partition. After
No,
partition
this
or before?
This is just a little bit before.
Little before.
Yeah.
Even Srinagar was not safe for Hindus, you mean?
Yes. Actually, one of my father's friend, his name was Akbar, and he lived in Srinagar.
He's a Muslim gentleman.
Yeah. My father had gone to college in Lahore.
Okay.
And so this guy was from Lahore, and after studying, he settled in Srinagar. So he was telling my father that my father should send my mother and two of us children to his house for protection.
Oh.
But my Nana was not very confident about sending us to a Muslim home. So fortunately, in early August, very early in August, my mother and my mommy brought us kids on the plane from Srinagar, and they had nothing,
Okay.
a pair of clothes, but, and we were sent to New Delhi, where my father had a half sister, because my grandfather was married twice. His first wife had passed away, and they were living in New Delhi. So we came to stay with them because we had nothing.
Yeah.
And then my father was caught in Lalpur. He was in Lalpur with my grandmother, and when the trouble started, they told him that a special train was going from Lalpur to Amritsar. So he had a friend of his was giving him ride in the car to the station, and somebody stopped on the way and told him that the train was cancelled, and you better go back because there is trouble on the station. So he came back, and then again at night they were told to rush off from the homes. And as they were rushing off, one of his aunts went back to the house to bring her jewelry, and people told her not to go, but she wanted to bring it. So she was kind of murdered
At home?
in front of my other people who were fleeing.
Oh, I see.
So these people fled, but my father's aunt was killed on the spot.
Oh my gosh! And that's the house you mentioned across from your house, across from your house.
Yes.
Where you had also taken shelter.
Right.
I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah.
So your father then caught the train?
No, the train was cancelled, and he was sent. So they hid around, and then my father's cousin, one of his cousins, was in Indian Airlines, and he took a special plane. And he brought my father and grandmother from Lalpur to New Delhi.
And what about your uncle?
Yeah, he also brought uncle's family.
And what about your aunt's body? You don't know.
It was just left there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what happened to their property?
Everything was lost.
Did they get any money, any compensation? Do you know?
They got a little bit, like 10%. Like my father got some small piece of land near Pathankot.
Okay.
Yeah, which eventually, he sold to after his retirement and built a house in Dehradun.
Dehradun.
Yeah. And similarly, On my mother's side, they did not get anything.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
What about your house in Srinagar? Is it still there?
It's supposed to be still there, but I actually
You don't-
I went back, and you know, everything has changed so much.
Okay.
And
Did you go to that house?
no,
No. Did anybody ever visit back the house in Lalpur?
same uncle, you know, who had brought my father out on plane.
And whose wife died working?
No, no, this was the different cousin, the
Cousin, okay.
cousin who had brought him out of Lalpur. He went back,
Mm.
and apparently there were people who were living there that knew them.
Yeah. Oh, they knew them.
Yeah,
But they just moved in.
moved in,
Yeah.
and they were very good to him. They welcomed him, but you know, they were not going to give up anything.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, when you came here into the United States, you came as a married woman, right, with your husband?
Yes.
And how was adjustment like here in the United States? Was it okay? Was it any easy or difficult or?
It was, you know, hard on both of us. We were married just 1 month after
Oh.
we came here, and of course our marriage was arranged.
Okay.
So we did not know each other,
Okay.
and we didn't have much money.
Okay.
We came on
Struggled
his
like
scholarship. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, now, do you know if your family would have survived if they lived in Lalpur?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay. Now, when people ask you where your nationality, what do you say?
Well, I was, you know, myself, I was born in Srinagar.
Srinagar is part of India. You
Yeah,
always do.
yeah.
But do you ever say that your ancestry was Pakistani Punjabi? That is Punjab, which is now in Pakistan. But you don't. Do you say that to anybody?
Yes, if, you know, conversation comes up,
Okay.
I always tell them.
Okay. In India, have you ever faced any discrimination as a person from Srinagar or a person from Lalpur when you grew up? As you know, I mean, because you're a floating population, was it just fine? I mean, not worth mentioning, or is there anything you?
You know, I don't remember much.
Okay. So, but then that means this was just fine. Do you know if Hindus and Muslims or Muslims and Sikhs can live together in the context of Western art peacefully with equal rights?
I don't know that it's, you know, knowing human nature, and from what I've seen, it's pretty hard. There are always some people who can live with each other. But when Indira Gandhi was killed, you know, they celebrated and distributed sweets in LA. And one time we visited a Gurudwara recently in Bay Area. Not quite recently, but a few years ago. And everywhere it was, on their podium, it said, "Get out of India, get out of Khalistan."
I see.
So,
Okay. Yeah, there are extremists all the time. I'm almost to the end of it. Do you know if anybody benefited because division of India? Anybody gained anything?
excuse me. I don't believe so. I think there were atrocities on both sides.
But did anybody in the end, let's say our Hindus or Muslims or politicians or rich people, did anybody benefit?
I'm sure some people benefited, but a lot of people lost lot, because I've heard the stories from my relatives, you know, what happened to them, and sometimes, you know, women jumped in wells to get away from,
It's suicide, you know.
yeah.
Come-
And children were like torn apart,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, sadly. Um, I'm almost at the end. So, is there anything else that I didn't ask you? You think you might want to mention about focusing on the partition of India and change?
It was, you know, when we came, it was very hard. There were like 4 children and about 10 adults. We were living in one small room
Mm.
for months,
Mm.
and until my father found the, you know, job,
Mm.
and then he took us and we all settled. But it was very hard, you know, coming from Srinagar. It was in the summertime in Delhi, on top of 3rd floor, one room and so many people, and there was not much anything, much of anything as a start from scratch.
So, what did your father do when he settled in India?
He worked for central government, excise, customs and excise officer.
Okay, so
And
that
actually he had worked a couple of years before the partition in Lahore, and mostly I think in Lahore.
yeah, Lahore was the capital then.
Yes.
So Punjab's capital.
Mm.
So all right, so it's thank you very much for your time. I appreciate.
Thank you.